I've been reviewing e-bikes for more than half a decade, and it's rare that a bike's features and traits feel entirely different. I've seen most combos before, but the Heybike Alpha here has changed that to a degree. It's a rare combination of fat tires, a mid-drive motor, and value pricing. And by fat bike standards, it's pretty lightweight too. So does this mashup of features, adjectives, and price point add up to a solid bike? Let's find out in today's review. Hey everybody, I'm Griffin and welcome to Electric Bike Report. Today I'm breaking down everything you need to know about the Alpha and how it performed in our testing. Just a friendly reminder, if you decide this bike is the one for you, you can support our testing by using the affiliate link in the video description. And if you're just browsing, make sure to subscribe for more reviews or our weekly show covering the latest e-bike news and all the other content that we have in the works. So before diving into everything the Alpha comes with, let's start with my biggest takeaways. First off, the motor experience was a huge positive. Heybike equipped the Alpha with what they're calling the Galaxy eDrive, which is made by Mivice. It's a 500-watt motor with a ridiculous 105 Newton meters of torque. This thing was tons of fun. It had really smooth engagement and climbed hills impressively well. I thought it pedaled in a really intuitive way where you could quickly speed up or ease off. There are a few quirks with the supporting elements though. The Alpha lacks a shift sensor, so you'll want to be mindful not to shift under load to keep the drivetrain running smoothly. And the throttle is somewhat limited, which is typical for mid-drives. But overall, the motor won me over and wildly outperformed my expectations, especially given the bike's affordable price tag. I also thought the overall handling of the ride was great. All things are relative. Fat bikes aren't exactly light, but among similar bikes, the Alpha's 70 pounds is about 10 pounds less than the average fat bike that we've tested this year. I felt like the difference was noticeable. It's lighter to lift onto a hitch rack or into a truck bed, and that lighter weight contributed to its nice handling. The bike feels comfortable and maintains good handling whether you're just cruising or pushing the speed a bit. It's also just a really solid on-road ride. It has a high 400-pound weight capacity, a sturdy rear rack, and an upright riding posture. It's great for leisure rides, commuting, and thanks to the tires and suspension fork, it can handle some dirt trails or trips down to the beach and back, cutting across the sand included. Now let's run through the rest of the specs before jumping into testing. As of filming, the Alpha is priced at $14.99. Tariff talks are dominating the news right now, so that could change. Make sure to click the link below for current pricing. The Alpha is a Class 2 and 3 e-bike with a throttle up to 20 miles per hour and pedal assist to 28. It's powered by a removable 680 watt-hour battery. The aluminum frame comes in either a black high-step or white step-through option, and the entire electrical system is fully UL certified to 2849 standards. The Alpha rolls on 26 by 4-inch fat tires and stops with unbranded 2-piston hydraulic brakes on 180mm rotors. It features a coil suspension fork with 80mm of travel, along with lockout and preload adjustment. The drivetrain is an 8-speed Shimano Alta setup with a 48-tooth chainring, an 11 to 32-tooth cassette, and rapid-fire trigger shifters. Up front, the cockpit includes a 680mm handlebar and rubber grips that feel a little slick. On the right side, there's a twist grip shifter, and on the left, a control pad that includes turn signals, which run off the brake light, and a horn. The center of the bar has a large display that shows basic readouts like your speed and real-time watt output. The display could use some improvements, but I'll save those details for the testing sections. The Alpha also includes Bluetooth connectivity through the Heybike app, but the functions are pretty limited outside of adjusting the number of PAS levels. I'll dive more into that when we talk about ride quality. And finally, rounding out the accessories, the bike comes with a headlight that has auto-sensing light detection, a rear rack, and included plastic fenders. Now, let's take a look at how it performed in our testing. Our first test is all about the brakes. I personally handle this one for every bike we review to keep the weight and rider effort consistent. For the test, I rode the Alpha up to 20 miles per hour, slammed on the brakes, recorded the stopping distance, and repeated that 3 times to get an average. The Alpha had an average stopping distance of 20 feet and 2 inches, and any way you slice it, that is a good result. So as of this filming, the fat bike average sits at 22 feet 5 inches, and the all bike average is at 21 feet 8. One way the Alpha gains an edge over similar fat bikes is its lower 70-pound weight. Like I mentioned, it's one of the lightest fat tire rides that we've tested, which definitely gives it an advantage. But beyond the test score, the brakes feel good out on the road. They offer decent modulation for quick stops or just slowing down smoothly. Now, they are unbranded, so I can't speak to their longevity, but we can certainly vouch for their performance. The goal of our speed test is to see how fast the bike rides in each PAS level. The Alpha is a Class 3 e-bike, so let's head out for a quick test. Okay, so this is the speed test for the Heybike Alpha. Riding around right now without any motor help. It's going about 10 miles per hour, just here in third gear, maybe moving up to fourth. Overall, it's actually pretty nice. It's noticeably lighter than most other e-bikes, so I do like that. Let's go ahead and see what sort of things happen when we turn that power on. Moving up into PAS1. So we've got the display set to show me the watts. Motor engagement kind of kicks in, you can feel it. It's humming a little bit, you can feel it a little bit. Moving things along, and it kind of bumps you up subtly. I'm not looking down and seeing the speed increase. You almost, can't really detect the motor helping a ton, but I say that in a good way, because going faster, obviously, without really feeling it. You can kind of see the watts sort of dancing around with 50, giving me some here and there, but let's go ahead and move it to PAS2. Again, more of the same. Like you're going a little bit faster. You can't really tell the motors. There's actually really good engagement that I like. Build the speed a little bit. Again, see the power meter readout maybe a little bit on the display. Kind of trusting the speed a little bit more on my personal speedometer than I have on the display, which I'll talk about a little bit more in the studio. That's just kind of calm. I've been building up to about 18 miles per hour PS2. Let's move it over to PS3. In 7th gear at this point, able to get some measure of watts. Moving into 8th gear. Pushing upwards about 21 miles per hour. Moving to PAS4. Definitely getting greater surges of power here. A little bit more apparent that it's blasting you along, but again, simply fluid engagement for the most part. Going to PAS5 on the other side of this after about 22, 23 miles per hour PAS4. Slow down a little, so move down a gear. Slow the cadence a little bit, move back to 8. You can see, we're giving upwards of 900 watts. Power's pretty good. You're seeing 29 over here, but getting closer to 25, 26. My speedometer app. I'm trying to give it a good amount of pressure without taking over for the motor. I'm still trying to get the motor to do most of the work, but about 25.5 miles per hour, so it seems to be about the ceiling on this. So, looking back at those results, the bike moves fairly easily with no motor, going 10.2 miles per hour. From there, it bumps up to 13.2 in PAS1, 18.3 in PAS2, 20.9 in PAS3, 23 in PAS4, and finally 25.6 in PAS5. Now, mid-drive motors with torque sensors will vary by user depending on your input level, but that's a base of expectations with a fairly consistent effort. So as far as the distribution goes, that's a decent spread. The engagement along with PAS1 through 3 is subtle yet powerful, while the change to PAS4 and 5 is much more pronounced. The higher levels cluster together a little bit, but overall they're distinct enough with some differences on hill climbs. This is the type of bike that I felt moved easily in crowded bike lanes and paths. It's not lurchy when starting out, and you ramp up and back down nicely, so it's practical experience when riding near others. You probably noticed that my phone app and the bike's display didn't see eye to eye. The phone was the more accurate of the two, as it seems like the display misjudges speed, and even the companion Heybike app seemed to struggle a bit too. So I rode mostly by feel and busted out a speedometer app when sticking to speed limits. We run two different tests to gauge a bike's range, one in the max power level of PAS5 and the lowest practical level, which was PAS1 in this case. Since this is just a Class 3 e-bike and we couldn't set it to Class 2 20 mile per hour speeds like we normally do, we kept the PAS5 in a middle gear to stick closer to the 20 mile per hour mark for comparison purposes with other bikes we test. The range test results of the Alpha were a tale of extremes. It produced one of our highest mileage minimum power tests and one of our lowest mileage max power tests. In PAS1, we achieved 79.2 miles, and then when we charged it up and rode it again in PAS5, we went 19.4 miles. Kind of a strange mix. So on the good end, the low power result is terrific and feels practical for people who are just mildly cruising around. It's one of our all-time top fat bike range tests. The bike helps you move pretty easily, but it did struggle a bit on steeper hills, so PAS2 might be more practical for riders looking for an eco experience. The odd part of the result is typically we see max power results are closer to half of the min results. In this case, it was only a quarter of the mileage. The bike seems dialed on low power, but really cranks out power on the high end where it's just less efficient overall. Now, Heybike could also make the Alpha more reliable as the battery indicator was sort of all over the place. It is in a state of constant adjustment where it tries to reflect battery life in real time based on how hard you're pushing it. So in other words, if you're going fast, it'll drop significantly, and ditto when you're pushing harder on a hill. It's a bit less dramatic in lower PAS levels, but still something more consistent would be nice as it's hard to really know how much battery life you actually have remaining. I noted some swings up to 50% in a given moment. So here are my bottom line thoughts where range is concerned. I really like how many miles this bike can give people who are mostly just cruising, but it's on the shorter side of mileage for high power users. So make sure 20-ish miles is enough for you, and you might need to get a feel for your routes as the display isn't too reliable for estimating the remaining battery. Now it's time for the hill test, and this is the test I was most eager to see how the Alpha could do. For all the bikes that we review, we take them to our local Hellhole Trail, a paved third of a mile climb with an average grade of 12%. Now typically we run two tests, one using just the throttle and one while pedaling with max assist. But we opted to skip the throttle test this time since it's more complicated with mid-drives in general and with how the Alpha is programmed. Justin is our go-to tester here, so I'll hand it over to him to show you how the Alpha did.
Okay, we're out doing a hellhole on the pedal test with a Heybike Alpha. Mid-drive, I'm in PAS5, and in the, in PAS5, it's kind of cruising up here. 15 miles an hour, 15.1, 14.0, 13.5. I'm not having to push much. I'm in 5th gear, haven't changed out of it. Get down to about 12.6, 12.7. Motor, say slightly above average in terms of sound, in terms of loudness. I'll let you listen here. So I guess I wouldn't call it louder, but there is a slightly higher pitch to it. But I think is what I'm hearing. But overall, the motor actually feels really nice. Really responsive, very natural. And I think it'll have a decent result. Again, I'm not pushing very much here. The bike is doing most of the work. And we'll go check the tape, see how it scores.
The Alpha made it to the top in a time of 1 minute and 19 seconds with a 13.7 mile per hour average. That is a great result, placing it 7th all-time amongst mid-drive e-bikes and outpacing the all-bike average of 1 minute and 28 seconds. Now, while we didn't do an official throttle test, I'll just add that in general, the motor seems a bit more reserved than when pedaling. Again, you don't want to push it with the drivetrain, so it does make some sense. But if you are pedaling, the Alpha can put all that torque to some good use and make climbing easier. It makes for an overall pretty nice and active climbing experience. Official testing is done, but let's take one last spin to talk about how the general ride is here on the Alpha. So the Heybike Alpha is kind of unique amongst fat tires. I mean, a lot of them are kind of pushed and marketed towards like the aggressive thing, that go anywhere, do anything nature. And like this has elements of that to it, but really just kind of that rare combination of lighter weight and mid-drive fat tires just makes it for a pretty comfortable and nice on-road experience. And I think that's where it's at its best. So let's get into all the different like fit and feel elements of the bike. So there are two different frame sizes. You're locked in with the high step or the step through. Here on the high step on your left. Here on the high step model, it feels pretty good for me. I'm 6'1", 32-inch inseam. I'd say I'm like 5% away from my ideal amount of leg extension, so it's pretty close. I'd say it's gonna fit riders from 5'6", 5'7"-ish up to 6'1" or 6'2". Only like 5 inches of adjustment in the seat post itself, and it's on a thick stem, so you're a little bit limited in terms of fit, but again, with the step through option, sized a little bit differently. Shorter riders can look at that one. You have some options here. Going back to how it feels, so it's fairly upright riding posture. It's not full straight back, full cruiser mode, but just a very slight forward lean, so it's more cruisery, commutery. Not overly aggressive either, but really nice. It's a shorter reach, the type of thing you can just handle with confidence. And speaking of handling, 680 millimeter bar with 4-inch wide tires, that's a really good sweet spot. You don't need a super wide handlebar with tires this wide, I've found. This thing doesn't feel overly twitchy, doesn't feel overly like wide and lazy into turns. The type of thing that has some decent handling to it. And depending on how much PSI you're running in the tires, you know, if you're running it a little bit lower, can increase the comfort, give you more of a contact patch for on-road riding, which is really nice. But it's nice because you can traipse across some dirt, some gravel, some snow or sand or something like that. Again, it's not something I think of as a primary operator off-road. I like what it's going to do for you on-road more than off-road. The fork is nice to have. You've got 80 mil of travel. It's an unbranded one. It says Alpha on the side. I'm not sure who makes it. It's definitely on the entry-level side of things. I like that when I get on it, it doesn't immediately sag. However, when it engages, it kind of engages like all the travel at once. So again, more budgety. It's going to be nicer for, you know, taking care of potholes than it is for true hardcore romping off-road. But if you want to take this bike with you camping or something like that, it can definitely do that, especially because at 70 pounds, that fits a lot of e-bike hitch racks easily. You don't even have to like worry about taking the battery out, which is really nice to have. And I gotta say, you can also appreciate that 10 pounds of difference. So fat tire e-bikes in general, I mean, they're heavier than most other e-bikes. That's undeniable. But you know, for this one, most of the fat tire e-bikes I've tested lately are closer to 80 pounds, if not beyond 80 pounds. So something coming in at 70, it's noticeable. It's definitely something I appreciate about it. So last but not least, let's talk one more time about the motor. So there are a couple of issues with the display that I've talked about. We'll talk about a little bit more later. But if you kind of ignore the display and just focus on how it feels on the road, I actually just like the motor engagement. Like, it does ramp power up really nicely, and it's got a surprising amount of power. Like, I thought the bike might struggle, might not move super well, but it's really got all the power that it needs. I like how it feels at lower power levels and higher power levels. I'm just pretty impressed overall, and it's exceeded my expectations for a value-priced e-bike. But let's kind of wrap things up a little bit more and talk about the type of buyer who's going to be best suited here on the Alpha. So between the high payload it can carry, the powerful motor, and its more engaged experience, this will be a good ride mostly for people who want a bike with a bit more balance and who either want to get or stay active. Like most affordable fat tires, I think the Alpha is largely a road rider with versatility to handle the elements and the occasional trips across unpaved terrain, but its ride quality properties are at their best when speeding along shorter trips or mildly cruising on longer ones. Like I mentioned before, this bike is somewhat of a rarity. An affordable mid-drive fat tire, it's just seldom seen, and its lighter weight is a bonus too. The combination of all these different features and traits means I think it'll hold a certain appeal for someone who wants an active, stable ride with reliable motor performance, but doesn't want to break the bank. The handling is nice, and the ride is overall pretty comfortable. And consider me a fan of the Galaxy series of motors developed by Mivice. It's one of the nicer budget mid-drives I've tested. Although I wish the supporting cast of the display and throttle were a bit better, if you're just looking for a solid fat tire cruiser or shorter commuter experience, this one could be right up your alley. That'll do it for this review. Let me know what questions and comments you have about the Heybike Alpha down below, and if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe. I'm Griffin with Electric Bike Report. I'll see you on the next ride.